we were trying to clarify what core U.S. objectives are at the moment in the theater in the wake of the events the last couple of weeks. So we set it out as first to weaken ISIS or Daesh to prevent it from controlling substantial territory in Iraq, from which it can become a threat to the region, allies, and the U.S. homeland. 2, reduce threat of growing sectarian conflict from sparking a wider civil war in the region. 3, safeguard reliable and capable partners such as Jordan, Turkey, and the KRG. To get there, we set out 5 key steps. The first of these, and this is pretty much the orthodoxy in town now, is to condition U.S. assistance to Iraq on government reform and action to incorporate and empower quote-unquote moderate Sunni. We can have a conversation about what, but we were all, I think everyone was welcomed President Obama's call for the assurance that the Iraqi government will now take action to unify the country and reduce sectarian tension. How that's going to happen is a whole other set of questions we can get into if you want. Our sense is that all further aid, except for efforts deliberately designed to degrade ISIS's threat to Baghdad, and humanitarian assistance for those displaced should be conditioned on a serious and significant commitment in Baghdad to greater regional autonomy and inclusive governance. Our second recommendation was to inoculate against a regional war and crack down on regional support for ISIS. Here we urge that the U.S. should engage in a full court press throughout the region involving top military, intel, and diplomatic officials to persuade relevant regional stakeholders, and here Turkey, Jordan, Saudi Arabia at the head of the list, and even Iran, to step back from actions in Iraq and Syria that could lead to wider conflagration. And here we thought one of the more helpful mechanisms we should probably get into would be the Gulf Cooperation Council. I mean, last month, Defense Secretary Hagel was out and he secured a general commitment to work together to enhance regional security, including overall measures to limit ISIS. Here we were working or trying to put on our thinking caps and maybe work a little bit closer with David Cohen's shop over at Treasury, OFAC, to do a little bit more work with Saudi and others. This not to target, obviously, official government assistance moving out to ISIS, but individual or private assistance that may be moving from certain countries in the Gulf out to ISIS. And we can have a conversation about the evidence base for that. And here, I mean, Saudi has a critical role to play in terms of what they have access to, what they can see, and how we can all work together to make that happen. Step 3 is to mobilize regional stakeholders through a big diplomatic push for a political solution. Here, I think we already see a lot of this happening. The U.S. Should be playing a lead role in intensive diplomatic effort. Secretary Kerry is obviously in theater. We need to work in developing a strategy and coordinated approach to pull Iraq back from the brink. And here what we're looking at is the model from 2006 to 2008, where the United States participated in diplomatic discussions involving all of Iraq's neighbors, including Iran, to help decrease the violence in the region. This is a moment where everyone, obviously in the region, needs to be as productive as possible in trying to quiet some of the tension. Very, very difficult. We all acknowledge at this point. But clearly putting together some sort of diplomatic group, I mean, something like 6+2, what we use in Afghanistan, may obtain, but where Saudi has a lead role at the table with all the other actors to help us work on this. Because Saudi has some impressive contacts inside of some of the tribal affiliates out in the Triangle, and they're going to be critical to the solution here. Step 4, we need to reinforce reliable and capable partners in the region. The United States in particular, we're looking at key regional partners like Jordan, who are already swamped by the outflow and the impact of the civil war in Syria. On the U.S. side, there's more we can do, probably a little bit more ISR, more on the security intelligence, a little bit more in support to the Jordanian military. We're also looking at some of that stuff for Turkey and the KRG. Here, what we would hope for from the Gulf, and particularly from Saudi, the kingdom has been tremendously generous in its humanitarian assistance for Syrian refugees from the crisis in Syria. Jordan and a couple of other countries, but particularly Jordan, it's less to do with the problem of Syrians now living in camps in Jordan, and more to do with the 80% of Syrian refugees who live outside and who are taxing the general infrastructure of the country. and there some additional cash transfers to the Jordanian government to help them shore up their basic infrastructure and social services will be a critical element sort of holding this piece together, and I think we would all welcome Saudi's role in that. 5, our final recommendation obviously is to prepare limited counterterrorism operations against ISIS, including possible airstrikes. We can go into more detail here, but clearly we're seeing the 300 Special Forces advisors who have been deployed have a great deal to do with working out which units inside of the Iraqi military are still battle ready, and then how, if it came down to it, we could be able to collect intel, develop target sets, and mobilize in order to sort of turn the tide against ISIS. Obviously a very tricky exercise. We can get into the tactics of it if it's something you guys are interested in. But the immediate question this obviously raises is ISIS is, in all likelihood, if you do turn the tide, a lot of it will slip back into Syria. And then we get into questions about how we work with our partners, including Saudi, to do a little bit more work with the Syrian opposition so that it's a more comprehensive and global response to the ISIS threat. I think with that, I will turn it over to the rest of our panelists and those who are joining us for questions. Thank you.